Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello again, everybody. This is the Coach Shannon Griffith, and I welcome you to our live stream here tonight on Thursday night. Appreciate those that are joining us live for tonight's broadcast, and hope that we can get some individuals involved. And if you have any questions, by all means, please post a comment in the comment section of the platform you are watching on at this moment. I'll be glad to try to get things answered for you, but big weekend for the Indiana Hoosiers. But of course, like every week, let's do a little housekeeping here. I want to thank Bet Online for their continued sponsorship of the Hoosier football tailgate on the Believe Network. Remember, with NFL season kicking off this weekend, as well as college football continuing on with their season, Bet Online is your number one source for all things sports wagering, with up-to-the-minute stats, parlay information, single game parlay information, you name it, they've got it at Bet Online. Remember that you can also get live stats as the games are occurring. And don't forget that the NFL, they have their $200,000 jackpot that they are implementing this weekend for the NFL. That is a part of Bet Online's platform as well. And also, remember, if you get a little tired of the sports action, don't forget you can head on over to the Bet Online Casino, where you can partake in poker and blackjack, as well as other card games. And if you don't want to take part of the card games, don't forget they have 150 different types of slot machines there at Bet Online. Remember, Bet Online is where the game starts here. Also want to thank those affiliates of ours that have joined with Hoosier Football Tailgate. You can find that on bio pages that on X and Facebook and Instagram that can give you a link to all those in the on the Linktree bio, where you can go to the shop page on that one, and you will see the different platforms there that we are affiliated with. Remember, if you were to purchase something from those affiliates, first and foremost, greatly appreciate it. Second, remember, I will get a little bit of a commission. Not that I'm going to retire and just start living off that, but it's a much appreciated commission that they send us as well when somebody from the Hoosier Tailgate audience purchases something. So I wanted to make that clear. Also would like to say that getting ready for this big game this weekend, the Hoosiers are on their way out to Pasadena to the Rose Bowl as well. I'm sure they will practice there tomorrow to get themselves acclimated. But if you've been following the news of late, you have seen that they've had not hurricanes. We've had hurricanes in the South, but they've had earthquakes there today, close to the LA area, as well as some of the different forest fires and live fires that they have currently going on and battling out there in California. So a lot of different things going on. As well as this little tidbit, UCLA students are not in session right now. They are on the quarter sessions, and they will not be on campus as a student body until either it's next week or the following week. So the Bruins will not have their student body, but I am sure they're going to venture to the Rose Bowl to see Indiana and UCLA, a part of Big Ten Saturday night on NBC Sports at 7:30 kickoff. And that is going to be a live broadcast from out there. So that is a neat thing as well. And I do believe this is the first time that the Big Ten will have a quote unquote national audience from all the way from the Midwest all the way to California, being that this is the first Big Ten team to venture out to the West Coast. So a lot of first happening there this weekend out in the great state of California. But if you are on your way out, we wish you safe travels. If you are going to watch the game and you haven't taken part of watching the Hoosier football tailgate, it is a great source for you to get yourself acclimated for the game on Saturday. And for those that are in California, what better way to pass the time of day to get you ready than tuning into the Hoosier football tailgate? So a lot of things going on in the world of Big Ten sports with a lot of different things. One thing that has happened nationally, as you have may been following, the NCAA lawsuit that was supposedly had the agreement of both parties and they were awaiting the judge to sign off on. She has kicked it back to the attorneys on some wording that she did not like. And some of it had to do with the collectives and how those were going to may be orchestrated from going forward. She didn't want to restrict anything there. The NCAA and the schools would love to eliminate collectives and bring them all into under the one umbrella where they could have more say-so in it. But right now, she doesn't look like she's going to allow that to occur. And so the NCAA and the attorneys are going to have to figure out what is a suitable solution for the situation there. And then Bernard Robinson and Dylan Edwards from Michigan that played away, back a few years ago, they just filed a $50 million lawsuit alleging that the NCAA denied them their opportunity to have name, image, and likeness, and they lost opportunities financially. And so they're now suing the NCAA for $50 million. So there's a lot to be kept abreast of there and what may or may not transpire. But if these two parties cannot come to an agreement, then they will proceed to trial. And if that does happen, the NCAA as we know it may no longer exist. So there's a lot of things that are in the air, but the most important thing in the air is footballs. And that's going to happen this weekend for the Indiana Hoosiers, who are coming off a very dominant performance against Western Illinois this past Friday night down there in Memorial Stadium, where they broke a scoring record that went back a pretty good chunk of years. But Indiana putting 77 up on the board against Western Illinois was a pretty dominant performance. All being said, even though the competition was maybe a step or two below Indiana, the fact of the matter is the way that offense was clicking on Friday night, I'm not so sure they wouldn't have put some points up on any team, because they pretty much were pretty flawless for the better part of the game. And I think Coach Signetti was pretty proud of the way the offense had played. And then, of course, defensively speaking, they played well. They identified a few things that they need to correct, because a better team, a la UCLA, will make them pay for it. So some things they had to correct this week. I'm sure they got it done. And I do believe that they're in the pretty good health as they head out west to UCLA for the Big Ten Saturday night on NBC. Well, let's take a quick look here of some of the things that happened this past week in terms of the Big Ten and the scoreboard. Of course, the one on top there, Western Illinois, Indiana, that was a big win by the Hoosiers. Duke came out, found a way. That game on Friday night, they're on the shores of Lake Michigan, and the Blue Devils escaped Evanston with a 6-point win over Northwestern in a very good football game if you happen to get a chance to see any of it. I was able to catch the last few minutes after the IU game, and that was a pretty darn good ball game. Rutgers, again, an impressive win over Akron. Minnesota gets their first win, shutting out Rhode Island. Bowling Green and Penn State, the Falcons gave the Nittany Lions all they could handle. And Blazak, I believe this is the young man's name, who played at Indiana under Tom Allen. And that was kind of an interesting side note. Former quarterback going up against his former head coach, who is now the defensive coordinator at Penn State. And in that first half, Bowling Green looked pretty darn good against the Nittany Lions. Now, Penn State in the second half came out and made a few adjustments, especially defensively, and basically shut them down and gave them nothing opportunity-wise. So not sure if that was Penn State looking past them. I believe they're at West Virginia. Is it this week? No, not West Virginia. I'm escaping me who Penn State has this week. But anyway, Bowling Green had a great showing. Texas goes into Michigan and manhandles the Wolverines 31-12. A little shocking, but that Texas team is awful good. Washington with a pretty commanding win over Eastern Michigan, 30-9. Iowa loses to Iowa State in the late stages of that ball game, 20-19. And it wasn't a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination, but Iowa had pretty much led that game up until the very end. Michigan State found a way to get a W at Maryland. So pretty impressive by the Spartans there to get a win out at Maryland. And they're looking to get themselves in a position to get themselves on a hot streak here. And that may happen. Wisconsin and South Dakota. Again, Wisconsin comes away with a 27-13 win. The Badgers have Alabama Saturday. Illinois beats Kansas, which was kind of an upset for most people, but a good win for Coach Bielema and the Illini. Nebraska over Colorado. Ohio State looked awful good against Western Michigan. Oregon, another game that they kind of struggle through, but find a way to win at 37-34 over Boise State, who was just extended a invitation to join the Pac-12. And then, of course, UCSC dominates Utah State 48-0. And what can you say there when you talk about their dominance as a football team, from a two-game perspective, finding a way in the last 2 minutes to put in a win against LSU, and then doing what they are supposed to do against the Utah State that was completely outmanned when it came to what was shown there on Saturday night at USC. So that gets you up to date on some of the scores that are in and around the Big Ten this past weekend. And now we get a chance to sit back, relax, and talk about these UCLA Bruins. One game for UCLA versus Indiana's 2. So they got the additional film from an evaluation and scouting standpoint, where Indiana only had one game. Not sure it meant that much anyway. At least gave them a chance to see the new coordinators, because UCLA does have 2 new coordinators. But the one new coordinator is from outside of the UCLA circle there for Deshaun Foster. But that's Eric Bieniemy, who's been in the NFL for quite a few years, most notably under at Kansas City, where he was coaching Patrick Mahomes. So got a chance to see what he likes to do. So Indiana did gain some things from there, but they have been studying things from different eras of Bieniemy's background at different places to get ready for Saturday. But looking at they're too deep here, and some of the guys that you got to be aware of Saturday. Offensively, they have a very experienced group, especially when it comes to red shirts. They've got 4 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 red shirts right there from the offensive lineman aspect. So very experienced. You can see their offensive line. It's an impressive size offensive line, 6'5", 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". So there's a lot of size in that offensive line, and it's a pretty experienced offensive line. Then you look at some of their skill players. Gerbers is their guy. I mean, Ethan Gerbers is the redshirt senior that has, kind of waited his time there and got a chance under Chip Kelly and his offense, but now he is flourishing under the enemy and his style of offense. And big kid too, redshirt senior, 6'3", 210. He is the type of quarterback that can hurt you either way, running the ball or throwing the ball, and that kind of fits into their offense and a little bit of what, Patrick Mahomes would do at Kansas City, where you think you've got him cornered in and all of a sudden he finds a way to escape and makes the play down the field. Gerbers has that in him as well. We'll talk about that when we get to the film room. And then in the backfield, Harden and Jones are their two top guys there, 6'2", 220, 5'10", 185. Those two guys pretty much will carry the mail for them. And then as it pertains to the wide receiver room, I don't think is as deep as Indiana's, but Flores is their top guy. The sophomore, he's a tall, lanky kid, 6'2", 205. He made some plays against Hawaii. And so they do have a experienced offensive football club and good, solid athletes led by a really good quarterback. So Indiana, defensively speaking, will be challenged this week when it comes to the UCLA Bruins and everything that is involved with them offensively. They are a spread offense that does incorporate some tempo and no huddle. They don't necessarily get overly complicated in their offensive scheme. But again, it's the different looks that IU will face on Saturday evening, along with some of the different motions and stuff. So they didn't overly show their hand against Hawaii, other than what they needed to win with. And they did that with a 16-13 win at Hawaii. Then you look at their defense. Again, another experienced group on defense. They are a 4-down front team, but they're more of a 3-4 type of scheme, very similar to what Indiana does. They are a pressure-oriented package type of defense where they're going to bring at least 5 on every play to a certain extent. And then they will come after you and bring one more than you have to block. So you will see a 6-man rush, and you will see a lot of zone blitzes that they like to incorporate in their scheme. The linebackers are 2 talented kids that make a lot of plays for them. The Wallace kid at nickel is very good. He makes a lot of plays in space and did a pretty good job at Hawaii. But he's a talented young man that does well. And then when you look up front, I think it's Toya, the senior nose guard. He is a very impressive kid, 6'3", 325, and moves well. And then I think it's Pua is also a talented rusher on the outside for them. And of course, he's got some length to him, and that also helps in the rushing department. And so defensively, it is a pretty darn good defense that you're going to see some pressure from, and you're going to see things that Indiana maybe hasn't seen in a while defensively. And of course, competition wise, they're going to be a team that Indiana hasn't necessarily faced in that regard. When you look at their statistic stuff so far, we talked about Gerber's and Jones are the two top rushers in that game at UCLA or at Hawaii, excuse me. Gerber's had 17 rushes, and he can move for, a quarterback. He does move quite well. And then in the passing department, we've discussed that as well, where against Hawaii, they ran the ball quite a bit. I'm sorry about that. They passed the ball quite a bit, but he was only 50% on the night. And, but had one big play when they needed it. And Harden, their running back, was their number one receiver, especially out of the backfield, where they would check down to him. And then their big play went to Flores. That's the young man that made a lot of big plays. He had the big chunk play there, but you can see they had their fair share of chunk plays in the passing game against Hawaii. Now, run game wise, they didn't have much, only 71 yards rushing, and that is a huge strength of Indiana's defense. So I doubt UCLA will find too much success in that department based upon what we've seen thus far. Then when you look over at their overall stats here before we get to their defense, they only give up 51 yards to Hawaii in the run game. Pretty equal on the passing game when you look at it. Overall yardage, a little bit separated there. As you can see, they threw 2 picks. They also got 2 picks. And it looks as if, Hawaii did have a fumble in that game. And, but overall, you can see third downs, both very similar, not great. And then when you get into the defensive categories, you can see where Wallace and Schweisinger were the 2 top guys, defensively speaking, Saturday night. And then they spread the sacks out. Wallace had a sack, KO, Henderson. They end up having 5 sacks on that game. So you can see with some of their pressure stuff, they got Hawaii into some third down situations or passing situations, even in normal downs, that UCLA was able to pin their ears back and go after it. And then they finished the game with 11 TFLs for 36 some odd yards. So defensively, they held them to 13. Hawaii led most of the game up until the latter part of the fourth quarter. UCLA kicked a field goal with less than 2 minutes left in the game. So you can see right there from that standpoint, they were very happy to get out of Hawaii and the islands with a victory. And so, but it's a very talented team. Even though they've had a change in coaching, it's a pretty unique, a staff that's been together for a while, with the exception of Bieniemy coming in and a few others. And Deshaun Foster, who's an All-American there, very well liked, played in the NFL for a while, but I think most of his coaching career has been at UCLA. So there is a lot of continuity within their football club, and even the new defensive coordinator who took over has been at UCLA, and that also kept the continuity of their defense, because the coordinator they had a year ago, he left and joined Riley's staff at USC. And if you've watched that defense from USC, and what they did to LSU and, of course, the shutout against Utah, you're going to see the same Saturday from UCLA because the guy that took over was his defensive line coach or linebacker coach. So there'll be a lot of similarities. But offensively, before we jump into Indiana statistics, they are a team that is talented at spots. They are pretty talented on the outside, and I do believe the running backs are decent. They did not have a great showing against Hawaii when it came to running the football, but they were down to Hawaii 13-0 for the better part of, I think it was into the third quarter before they got on the board. And both defenses did a good job of buckling down when they needed to force field goals as opposed to extra points. So it's going to be a challenge for the Hoosiers. There's no question. Indiana has opened up. I think they're up to a 3-point favorite. Over under is like 46. I know Coach Cignetti alluded to the fact that he was a little surprised that they were a favorite in this game. Of course, he doesn't pay too much attention to that, nor does he pay too much attention about the nostalgic arena that they're playing in at the Rose Bowl. I think he made a comment, whether it's the Rose Bowl or a parking lot, he just shows up against a nameless, faceless opponent and it goes to work. But they are a 3-point favorite at last check, and a 46 is the over and under in this game. So last time the Hoosiers played in the Rose Bowl, 1968 against USC, there for a little bit of trivia. Now they've been out to California a couple other times prior to this game out there. I think their most trip out there was a few years ago in a bowl game, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, this game at the Rose Bowl Saturday night, a lot of hype about it in at UCLA. The only problem is they don't have their students. So they are on the quarter system and don't start school for another week or so, I believe. And so we don't know what type of crowd will be there. I still think there'll be a decent crowd. And then, of course, the contingent of Hoosier fans that will either are living in the metropolitan California area out there in LA. I'm sure they'll have the opportunity to get to this game, which will be good to see for that standpoint. Now, when you look at, let's see here. What did I do? I took something off there that I didn't want to take off. Okay, there we go. When you look at Indiana statistics, and I know that these two games that they've had, by no means you could sit and make a lot of overall comparisons. Now, what I will say, FIU, who Indiana played week 1, they played Central Michigan Saturday, and they throttled Central Michigan, which was kind of a surprise. They beat them something like 56-7. FIU did. So that win for Indiana looks much better now, especially what FIU did to Central Michigan. And I've already heard people making the comparisons about FIU and NIU, Northern Illinois, who beat Western Illinois week 1, and then had the upset that was heard around the world in their game against Notre Dame. But since they beat Notre Dame, Indiana beat Western Illinois, does that mean Indiana could go and beat Notre Dame? Well, of course it does. It's still got to be played. You can't, it's not about the, 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon type of deal. But anyway, that win against FIU looks better now that they went and handled their business against Central Michigan in a game that was down there in Miami. But right now, Indiana, of course, offensively with the big output, 54 points a game. The defense has been outstanding, in my opinion. only giving up 5 points a game. Indiana's first downs, as you can see there, is almost tripled what the opponent is getting. But Indiana's doing a great job in their first down and second down being efficient, which is about what I look at. When I look at efficiency, I'm looking for a what would I say? It's about when you talk about efficiency, and I thought I was going to be able to write it here, but maybe not. You're really looking for that first and second down to average consistently 4 to 5 yards per down. In other words, you're hoping to get yourself into that third medium, third and shallow category for that. From that standpoint, and Indiana, for the better part of the games, has done that. And in some cases, they've even got their first downs on second down as opposed to even going to third down. Overall, in the rushing game, again, you couldn't be much better in terms of equality. 278.5 in the run game, 279 in the pass game, 46 attempts offensively in the pass game, 42 in the run game. So all probably close to a 60-40, which in football, that's pretty much balance. I know some people think balance is 50-50, but really it's kind of a 40-60 mentality, especially with Indiana, averaging 557 yards a game, which is outstanding. And only giving up 151.5 yards per game as a defense is a pretty good day at the office. They've done a pretty good job securing the football in terms of interceptions. I don't think they've thrown an interception yet, and I'm not sure they haven't lost a fumble yet. So in that respect, they've done a pretty good job. So they are currently a +4 in turnover margin, which is really good. Now, the one thing that isn't great is the fact that they've had a lot of penalties of late where they've given up, they've had some costly penalties the last couple of weeks, and that hasn't been good. And they're averaging about 52 yards a game, and we don't want to see that creep up much more in that regard. And then, of course, here's what I was talking about, the efficiency aspect of things. 58% on third down, and Indiana keeping their opponent to 26% on third down because their opponents have been facing a lot of long yardage situations. So Indiana will definitely be tested in this category on Saturday night. It'll be imperative that they continue to have that success on first and second down so they can continue to have this type of output on third downs. And then as you look here, Indiana's only given up 2 sacks, and they've got 10 sacks on the year. So really, really good there with everything. And then points per game and how it's spread out there. Really great first quarter. And then a third quarter, they've won 17-0, which is great. You'd like to see a little bit higher point production there. As you can see, that is their lowest point total of any of the 4 quarters. But that comes into play in some respects when you look at third quarter scoring. It can be a factor, but other than that, they've dominated the last 2 weeks. There hasn't even been a discussion with that. Defensive statistic wise, just a quick point out here, really getting great production by the into the inside linebackers, Fisher and Walker. They've been great the first couple of weeks, and you can see how Aiden Fisher has really made an impact here. 21 total tackles, already 2.5 TFLs, and he's gotten 1 sack on the year. The Ellsbury kid, that's the kid from Arizona, he's done quite well in his safety position or hybrid position at the safety spot. And then when you look down below here, Tucker, another one that's done quite well, 1.5 sacks, but he's got 2 TFLs for 12 yards. And then Mikhail, look at that, three TFLs, which is part of 3 sacks already on the year for 20 yards, a couple quarterback hurries. And then when you get into the interception category, Hardy, Farrell, and Collins all both had their interceptions last week, and I believe it was Hardy that got the big or was it, I think we had 2 pick six last week, if I'm not mistaken. So defensively right now, 10 TFLs, 70 yards, three interceptions on the year. There's just not, I mean, the defense overall is doing really good in that category this season when it comes to the statistical components of that when you break it down. Now, it's hard to get a lot of value from statistics when you don't have a lot of data to go on, especially like Hawaii's only got 1 game. Indiana has 2 that they thoroughly dominated on. And right now, the things that coaches really concentrate on early in the season, how efficient are they being offensively? Meaning first and second down, are they getting that 4 to 5, 6 yard average? And then, of course, third down conversions. And then from a defense perspective, they're looking at it from their perspective of, are they creating non-efficiency for offenses on first and second down that leads to them having a harder time converting on third downs? And through the first 2 weeks of the season, both units have done quite well in those categories. That doesn't mean that they're perfect. It doesn't mean they don't have some things to work on. But it was like with the offensive line, week 1 to week 2 in their pass pro, there was a significance in that in terms of getting better. And most offenses, you will see a pretty good jump from week 1 to week 2 in a lot of areas. And I think that was true for Indiana. Most defenses, for the most part, all things being equal, are a little further ahead than offenses are when you start the season. The other thing that Indiana has done a tremendous job with is field position. They've been able to create it and also maintain it, either through their kick game or the defense not allowing an offense to flip the field. So they've done a great job with that. Now, that's another stat that they'll look at. Are we getting field position? Are we forcing ourselves to have to drive the ball 80 some odd yards every time we touch the ball? That was one of the biggest problems last year for them. They had a lot of drives where they had, 60, 70, 80 yards to drive a ball, and it's just not you're just not going to do it consistently enough. And then on defense, they weren't getting great field position because offenses were having a short field. And when you have a short field as an offense, there's a high percentage that offense is going to score. So that was one of the big things last year that Indiana had a terrible time with, was field position. So that's another thing to keep an eye on as we progress through the season and how that's shaping out during the games when it comes to offense and defense. But right now, it's been pretty darn good in that category. And the other thing that I've noticed is the number of what I call chunk plays on offense. And you want at least 3, if not 4 a game. And that to me is runs over 15, passes over 25. I know in the statistical packet that they give out, they don't qualify it that high. They look at it anything over 12 yards. I think run or pass is considered a chunk play. But for me, I look at it a little different. And then from a defensive standpoint, they haven't really given up a lot of chunk plays. So again, I can't sit here and say they've been fully tested either in that regard, but we'll find out about some of that coming up against UCLA on Saturday. We're going to jump over here into Coach Griff's video room. That's sponsored by Quick Cut Sports. And they are a very good sporting software company. Let's see if we can get some things up here. Let's see if that happens. Okay. This game here is against UCLA in Hawaii. This is their first week 1. And I tell you, UCLA is one of those teams right now that played a game and then has been sitting for a week. And I would not want a bye week the second week of the season. It just is very disturbing with everything. So it's not something that I would want as a coach from that perspective. When it comes to that type of stuff in the start of the season, because it's just something that I wouldn't want to happen. And Indiana having the ability to play 2 weeks also makes that something that is a little bit in their favor, because they're a little bit in better game shape, I guess is what you would call it. In terms of being a little better prepared offensively and defensively to play a full game, where UCLA had to, take a bye, and that didn't help things. Help things either. So looking at this, we're going to jump into some of the film over here as I'm trying to get this thing working correctly, or I'm trying to, and my computer's not cooperating, I should say. Let's see here if I do this and say, let's try it again. Well, you think things would be pretty easy. Okay, here we go. Now we're back to operational status. But anyway, go look at a couple things here quickly as it pertains to their game last week, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess you could say, against UCLA. This one here is their offense against UCLA. And let's see, what do I got here? This is some of their plays in this ball game. And this is the type of play that this Gerber kid can make. The defensive secondary is going to have to do a good job of staying in coverage. This is a typical RPO where you can fling it out to the tight end there, but he just keeps it, runs it, and picks up a nice 12 yards. And he is a talented kid when it comes to that. This is a 3rd and 5 money down. Again, the receiver falls down here, and I don't think he makes a good read. And I think that's part of the problem that he had in this ball game, because the read is this guy right here in the flat. He could have hit him and probably got the first down, but he decided to go up, and this is one of the stops that Hawaii got. Here's one of the running backs. They do a lot, typical inside outside zone concepts. They're big offensive line, and Hawaii was definitely outmatched in this category. But for the most part, battled well with them. Again, first down, as you can see here, Hawaii in the first half got after them, and they covered them, and they made plays in that first half. Now, they had some bonehead penalties like there that gave up first downs. And then, again, UCLA up front's pretty good in the pass pro. They're pretty good in the pass pro. And when you give this kid time to sit back in the pocket, this is what he does. He can find the open guy and push the ball down the field. So a consistent pass rush against this cat is going to be important, as well as the defense sticking on their coverage and not getting their eyes in the backfield. Now here he hangs out his running back. It's probably the right throw, but he's a little late with it. And then he gets lit up, and then that kid gets called for at first they thought it was targeting, but it wasn't targeting. So it was too bad that happened. But again, as you can see here, second quarter, it's 7-0, and UCLA really hasn't got much going. Nice throw and catch here. Again, they like to move him in the pocket, set up different launch points, which is pretty good as an offensive play caller, because you don't want to get a defense too much to hone in on your quarterback. And again, 3rd down and 2. That's pitch and catch. And the bad thing is, and while I know that he's getting a down and distance scenario here where it's 3rd and 2, like right here, you only need to go that way. And I know he's getting a man-to-man look because of the way these guys are looking, and this guy's creeping up to take the running back. But if he just dumps it to his hard under guy right here, that's the first down, and if not more, because there's hardly out there, but he takes the toughest throw to throw, and it goes as an incompletion. Again, Hawaii getting after him. They did a good job with their blitz package. Here's bringing a 5-man look. It's kind of a zone pressure. And again, he's going to try to throw it deep, and it doesn't work. So he had a tough day for the most part. Now, this is another thing that he does well. Play action passing, setting themselves up, and they get one shot, and it's 10-0 midway through the 3rd, and they're in a tight bunch formation. You've seen that formation from Indiana, and this guy sneaks behind the safety, and they get a big post touchdown. So their offense might be a little bit asleep in this ball game, but they've had a week or two now to get it done. So here's another one, 3rd and 12, 13-7, late in the 3rd, and this is when you got to have your defense get off the field. They actually bring what we call delayed blitz, kind of a 4-man zone pressure, and they let him out. And then this is what he does. And then this guy doesn't stay in his coverage, the guy that's coming up and there you go. And that let them right back into the ball game. I mean, that play there was the play that turned the tide. Now, the defense does a great job here. of getting a stop in this drive, and Hawaii UCLA only gets 3 points, but they can get the ball down the field. Gerbers is really good with that. They've got a guy or two on the outside. Like I said, they're not as deep as Indiana is, wide receiver wise, but they're good with what they do. They can get some people deep. Now, the biggest thing is, let's watch. Let's take this one off. What you doing here? Okay, gotcha. Let's watch some of the blitzes that UCLA ran against this offense. Now, this is a 5-man pressure, but it's not an overload, but you can see the twisting that they like to do with it. This is one of their favorite things to do is run this type of twist where he's going to come here trying to pick off those two guys. This guy's going to loop, but they're really trying to get this cat free, and they do a pretty good job of it. And this is one of their favorite ways to bring pressure and then play zone and sometimes man free behind it. But you can see there, he doesn't get home, but he almost does. Now, they get some PIs in this game that help the cause. And you can see they like to blitz on first down. This is more of a run status blitz, but you can see they're playing a very man-oriented coverage there, and Hawaii rips them up the middle for 9. I mean, they are a blockable defense, and Hawaii did a pretty darn good. This is a bear look, and what I mean by bear is he's covering the center, he's covering the guard. These guys are outside shoulder of the tackles, and this guy has the back. If the back blocks, he blitzes, and you may see a guy drop into it as well, as you're getting a kind of a soft man free combination cover 3-ish look, because this guy may rotate. Let's see what happens if he stays in it or stays where he's at. So the guy that dropped is this guy. They're using this guy as a spy. As you can see here, he's just kind of hanging in the way they do things. And this quarterback does a good job of finding the weakness and the softest spots. So kind of a quick game concept here. Left hash concept here is you want to see who's got free access. Of course, this guy has the freest access because of this guy here, and it's the shortest throw. So this quarterback is going to catch, gather, throw against this type of look, boom, boom, and get the ball down the field and in and out of his hands. So they do a good job of this. So here's 1, 2nd and 10, going man. As you can see here, you've got these guys covering down. You've got a 4-man look with the backer hanging on the outside here. This is what we call the will backer, and he's going to come, and they're probably going to zone pressure again because they like to do that as well. Nope, he doesn't come. He fakes it. But you can see his partner comes, and then he kind of replaces the mic in the middle. And again, quarterback does a great job, just a simple kind of a flat curl concept, and does a good job of hitting the receiver in an open. Down here, it's pure man, normal. This is right before the half, so they did some funky things here. So here they're bringing 5. They're bringing the Mike and the Sam backer and dropping the other backer who came up on the guard. Hawaii picks this up pretty good. And that one there's just kind of is what it is there. Second half, 3rd and 7, money down again. This is a linebacker, backer, nickel. This is one of the, I think it's the safety that's looking to help strong. And they get great pressure and they get a sack. And you can see where that guy's coming from. He's coming from pretty good. So they did a great job here. They had a couple guys free and got home. And I guarantee you the Hoosiers spent a lot of time this week working these pressures, because you can see here, this is a pretty good look at one. They're in a 30 front on 3rd and 7. So, there's a corner, safety corner. And then they've got, their linebacking crew in here, probably a dime situation. And they're going to find ways to bring a zone pressure, and they can get another PI called against UCLA. So you can see it's a pretty strong defense with a lot of different things that they like to do up front. And they are a defense that gets after it. They believe in pressure, and they're different pressures. They're not full out blitzes. They're just pressuring from different areas of the field and bringing a different guy. And it's very similar to what Indiana likes to do defensively, and what Coach Haynes has done up through the first 2 weeks is really defensively, scheme wise, it's pretty simple for the kids to implement and run. It's just they have to know who's going, who's not going, and their pressure packages, and they do a good job of that. So it's a good scheme. Definitely Indiana's biggest test offensively will be against the Bruins. I do think they have some matchup issues in terms of positive ways that Indiana can match up. I think Horton's got to be a factor in this game as the tight end, not only in the run game, but in the pass game. And then, of course, on the outside, I do think they have an advantage. I do think Indiana's receiver room is better than what UCLA has in the secondary. So there's an opportunity here for them in this ball game to get what they need to get done to get a W on Saturday. It's just a matter of seeing how it all comes down, and if they get a W, it's going to be a well-earned W in that regard here. Did that. Let's see here. These are some of the things I think is going to be imperative for Indiana to get a win on Saturday out in Pasadena. We talked about Indiana, this being UCLA's first home game. They've got to, withstand that first 5 to 6, 7 minutes of the first quarter where UCLA is going to be pretty juiced, playing at home, first home game, first Big Ten game. A lot of the hoopla. I'm sure they'll have some festivities prior to the game. It's on NBC, Big Ten Saturday night, 7:30 kickoff. So they got to withstand that emotional 5-6 minutes at the start of the game. They got to have a huge defensive effort. And this is not saying that they haven't gotten that the first 2 weeks. This one is different. This is different. You got Gerbers, who's a heck of a quarterback. He has many different ways that he can burn you. And he's one of those quarterbacks, if he gets hot, he's hot. And it's just, he's on it. He was not on it per se at Hawaii until the second half, but it's imperative that the secondary stay in coverage, especially when he breaks containment, because as soon as you think he's running it, he's throwing it over your head for a touchdown. And that was number 3. Stay in coverage or Gerbers will burn you, and he will. And if you make a mistake in the secondary in your coverage or your alignment or anything that tips his hand and he's got a guy that he can get open, the ball's going to him. He's that good of a quarterback. He does good. He's very mentally strong quarterback, and he's going to be that much better than week 1 because he's had another week to progress and get better. Great third down efficiency for O&D, what I call the money downs, and that will be key in this ball game as well. got to win the turnover battle, as we always talk. And it also plays into potentially the kicking game and how that may or may not affect it. You can see the kicking game in many games this past weekend was a factor, and usually is week one. And you've got to understand that that is a component of the game that maybe doesn't get worked on as much, but when it's game-like action, it comes to bite you in the butt. I think Indiana's got to get 28 on the board against this group. I think that's a good number. And the defense, keeping them to 1 point less than 28 is the objective. But I do think they've got to put 28 on the board against UCLA to give themselves a shot. Curtis Rourke's been on fire. He's completing 72% of his passes, and done a pretty good job this last week hitting the guy for the deep ball that led to the big chunk plays on Saturday night against Western Illinois. So big game, great way to kick off the Big Ten season. If Indiana wants to be a team that can compete in the Big Ten, this is a game, while being on the road, that they need to get. This is a game that can catapult them, into a season that we all believe they're on the cusp of having. But we can't speak it into reality. The kids have got to play it into reality. And just like Coach Cignetti says, forget the last play the next one. They got to have that mentality on Saturday, and the secondary's got to have short-term memory, because Gerber's going to get them. I mean, he's going to have a couple, those type of plays, but you got to have you got to have a memory that erases things pretty quickly and get after it the next play. But if they can do some things that they've continued to do already, meaning offensive efficiency and the defense doing what they've been doing the last 2 weeks, I like their chances out in Pasadena. So enough of me rambling here this evening. I really do appreciate you being a part of this live broadcast here at Hoosier Football Tailgate on the Believe Network. For those of you that are heading out to California, maybe tomorrow, I wish you safe travels out to the Great West and enjoy the Rose Bowl and all things that Pasadena and LA have to offer during this time of year. And hopefully the earthquakes and the fires are under control for you when you head out there as well. For us, staying back here in the Midwest, and remember, this is a NBC Big Ten Saturday night broadcast at 7:30, and we're looking forward to a great ball game. Hoosiers getting to 1-0. We'll find out. I'll have a wrap up for it after the ball game with Jim Coyle, as we do from Indiana Sports Beat Radio, as we do a post-game show right after the ball game, probably within about an hour after the game is finished and all the interviews are done, and Jim can make it to a place that he can do a quick interview post-game show. We'll be on that, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. You can find it via YouTube or on Twitter and all the socials. But I'll be with you Monday to recap this game against UCLA in the Rose Bowl Saturday night at 7. Well, again, thanks for joining me. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. This has been the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on Believe.